The man I once trusted with my daughter's education left her broken, unable to speak, barely able to eat. And when I demanded answers, his wife laughed and said, "You should be careful making accusations you can't prove." I didn't say a word back then. That was 10 months ago. Now, she's the one pleading with me to stop opposing his parole. My daughter was 13 when I enrolled her in a summer language program called the Gaeltacht in Ireland. For those unfamiliar, it's meant to be a cultural immersion. Kids in middle school spend a few weeks doing outdoor activities like ziplining or kayaking. But there's a catch. You can only speak Irish. The idea is that if you slip up and speak English, you might get a light scolding or, at worst, be sent home. Nothing extreme. At least, that's what I believed. She was thrilled about going. Always the outgoing type? The kind of kid who'd make up games during recess and get even the shyest classmates to join in? She begged me to let her go, so I paid for her to spend 3 weeks at the camp in Galway. She left with a grin and a suitcase nearly as big as she was. 3 weeks later, I picked her up, and the car ride home was silent. I figured maybe she was just tired from the bus ride. But the next morning at breakfast, she barely touched her food. I tried to joke, said, "Dia duit?" Hello in Irish, thinking it might make her smile. Instead, she flinched. I mean, visibly recoiled like I'd raised a hand to her. "It was fine," she whispered, then asked if she could be excused. That night, I heard her crying through the door, not the quiet sobs of a homesick teen. These were full-body, gut-wrenching sobs. When I knocked, she immediately went silent. "I'm fine, Dad," she called out, but her voice trembled. Over the next few days, it only got worse. Every little sound startled her. When the neighbor's dog barked, she dropped a glass in the kitchen. It shattered. And when I bent down to help, she backed away like she thought I might hurt her. She started sleeping with every light in the room on. I gently asked, "Tara, love, what happened at the camp?" She shook her head. "Nothing happened. Can we not talk about it?" But it was clear something had. She wasn't eating, wasn't taking care of herself. This was the same girl who used to sing in the shower and talk nonstop about her day. Now she moved like a shadow in her own home. Then, about a week later, I got a message from a parent group. Other families whose kids had gone to the same camp. One mom asked, "Has anyone else noticed something different about their child since they got back?" A flood of replies came in. Kids refusing to speak Irish, others having nightmares, anxiety, panic attacks. One boy hadn't left his house in days. A girl was found hiding in her closet, convinced someone was watching her. That night, I made Tara her favorite, shepherd's pie. She barely picked at it, then quietly broke down in tears. And the truth came out. "They punished us for speaking English," she sobbed. "Even in your sleep, if you muttered a word in English, you were punished, not just scolded. Actual punishments. First offense, standing barefoot on gravel for an hour. Second, ice baths at midnight. Third, the hole. A dark storage room beneath the main building. No windows, no lights. Kids were locked in there for up to 12 hours. No food, no water. Just a bucket in the corner. I tried to hug her, but she backed away. Then kept going, desperate to get it all out. The camp had created a system where kids watched each other. If you heard someone speak English and didn't report it, you'd get their punishment too. Within 2 weeks, even best friends were turning each other in. The fear was everywhere. She showed me her arms, faded bruises, still visible. "The officers did this," she whispered. Turns out, the officers were older teens, former students who had gone through the same system and came back to enforce it. That night, I called the camp. Somehow got through to the director. His response? "These are proven immersion techniques," he said, like he was describing flashcards. "Your daughter's Irish improved significantly. You should be proud." I hung up and just stood in the kitchen, pacing, shaking. Tara was upstairs, probably checking her window locks again. She'd been doing that every night. I opened my laptop and started digging. Their website looked cheerful. Smiling kids, glowing reviews from parents, not a single mention of punishment. Nothing about the hole. Then I found something. An old Facebook post buried in the comments of a local news article. A mother asking if anyone else's child came home. Different. Traumatized. Her post was deleted, but someone had saved the comments. People told her she was overreacting. "Kids always complain about camp," they said. I kept searching. More deleted posts. More shutdown concerns. Always the same pattern. Kid goes in excited. Comes home a shell of who they were. Every time a parent tried to speak up, they were told they were overreacting. I stopped arguing and just started taking screenshots. Then another message came through. This time from Catherine. Her son Benjamin had been in Tara's group at the camp. She asked if anyone wanted to meet in person to compare what their kids had told them. Within minutes, 5 parents agreed. We set a time for the next evening at my place. I went upstairs to check on Tara. She was sitting on her bed, surrounded by Irish language books she used to love. One by one, she was tearing out the pages, crumpling them, and tossing them in the trash. I didn't stop her. The next morning, I called in sick and spent hours on the phone with other parents. The stories were worse than I imagined. Benjamin had been locked in the hole just for saying okay instead of the proper Irish phrase. He'd panicked in the dark and hyperventilated until he passed out. They found him hours later, barely conscious. Another girl had tried to resist the ice bath punishment. Those older teens, the officers, had held her down while she screamed. She still couldn't take cold showers without shaking uncontrollably. I was documenting everything when Tara came downstairs around noon. She looked exhausted, sunken eyes, drawn face. She saw the notes on my screen. "What are you doing?" she asked quietly. "I'm making sure this never happens to another kid," I told her. She hesitated, then sat beside me. "There's more," she whispered. "Stuff I didn't tell you yet." My heart sank. I kept my tone steady. "Tell me when you're ready." "No. You need to hear this now." She took a shaky breath. "The director has a daughter. She's only 10, but she was there too. They punished her just like the rest of us. I saw her in the hole once. They opened it to put someone else in, and she was already there, just sitting in the dark. She wasn't even crying." My stomach turned. These people weren't just hurting other people's children. They were doing it to their own. "And the officers," Tara continued. "I recognize some of them. They're from our town. They went to the camp before, came back to help, like it was normal, like they wanted to do it to other kids." The doorbell rang. We both jumped. It was too early for the parent meeting. I peeked through the peephole. Young guy, maybe 18 or 19, shifting nervously. I didn't recognize him. I opened the door just a crack. "Are you Tara's dad?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" "I was a counselor at the camp," he said. "I need to talk to you." I let him in, watching Tara carefully as she stiffened. I offered to take her upstairs, but she shook her head. She wanted to hear this. His name was Kath, and what he told us made everything worse. He'd gone to the Gaeltacht 5 years ago and experienced the same punishments. When he turned 18, he went back as a counselor, thinking maybe he could protect the younger kids. But he said the director made it clear: follow the system or face worse consequences. "I recorded some of it," Kath said, hands shaking as he pulled out his phone. "So did the director's son. We were going to report it after the summer." He trailed off. "What happened?" I asked. "The director found out, took our phones. His son's phone never came back, but I had backed everything up to the cloud. Then they said he was being sent to stay with family. No one's heard from him since." He showed me the videos. Kids standing barefoot on gravel, their feet bleeding. Ice baths. Children shivering so violently they couldn't even speak. A shot of the door to the hole with scratching noises coming from inside. I had to stop watching when I heard a familiar voice begging to be let out. It was Tara. "Why didn't you stop it?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice calm. Kath looked devastated. "We tried, but the director? He's connected. His brother's on the county council. His wife works at the local school. They've run that camp for 15 years. Anyone who speaks out gets shut down." That night, 7 families packed into my living room. The stories kept coming. Mary's daughter now had panic attacks just from hearing Irish on TV. Catherine said Benji had started wetting the bed again, something he hadn't done since he was 5. We compared everything, laid out the timeline. The pattern was clear. Week 1, the kids were broken down with escalating punishments. Week 2, they were turned against each other through mandatory reporting. Week 3, they were so conditioned by fear, they'd do anything to avoid another punishment. "We need to go to the authorities," Catherine said. "I already tried," another parent admitted. "Called the Gardaí in Galway. They said unless we had proof, it was just kids complaining about a strict language program." That's when I remembered the videos. I called Kath and asked him to send them. While we waited, more stories came out. Kids left to stand in freezing rain. Others denied food if they slipped into English during meals. One boy had come home with pneumonia. After the ice bath, they didn't call a doctor for days. My phone buzzed. It was Kath. The videos had arrived. I hooked up my laptop to the TV and we all sat in silence watching. It was one thing to hear the stories. It was something else to see it all. How organized it was. How the so-called counselors carried out the punishments like it was a job they were proud of. Dear God, Mary whispered. We paid them to do this to our children. We made a plan. Document everything. Get statements from the kids willing to speak up. Track down more former counselors. Build something so solid, so undeniable, that no one could sweep it aside. After everyone left, I found Tara in the kitchen, making tea. Her hands, for once, weren't shaking. Are you really going to stop them? She asked. I'm going to try, I told her. She nodded slowly. Good, because I saw the list in the office, while I was being punished. Dozens of kids are signed up for next summer. They can't go through what we did. In the days that followed, our group grew. More parents started coming forward, including some whose children had gone years ago. The stories spanned over a decade. Same methods, same damage, same silence. 3 former counselors agreed to write statements, under strict anonymity. They were still afraid of the director, of who he knew, what he could do. I tried calling the camp again, this time to record the conversation. But the director didn't pick up. His wife did. So you're the troublemaker parent, she said. Her tone was ice. The one spreading lies about our program. You should know, we're consulting our solicitor. If you continue this harassment, we'll take legal action. Your program hurt children, I replied, holding back my anger. Including your own daughter. There was a pause. Then, coldly, our methods build character. If your child couldn't handle it, that's not our responsibility. And I'd be careful making accusations you can't prove. She hung up. An hour later, I got an email from a law firm. A warning. Cease and desist. Legal threats. I didn't flinch. I forwarded it to the parent group. But instead of scaring us, it lit a fire. None of us were backing down. Not after what we'd seen. Not after what our kids had lived through. That night, Tara woke up screaming. I rushed into her room. She was thrashing in her bed, crying out in Irish. Na fag me anseo. Don't leave me here. Don't leave me. I sat beside her, rubbing her back until her breathing slowed. Until she drifted back to sleep. When she finally did, I went downstairs, opened my laptop, and started writing. Everything we'd gathered. Every detail. Every voice. Every scar. That camp had been running for 15 years. 15 years of pain, of silence, of children growing up thinking this was normal, and returning to inflict it on others. I thought of the director's daughter, only 10, locked in the dark. Of his son, who tried to expose what was happening and then just disappeared. Of the kids already signed up for next summer, whose parents still had no idea. I wrote through the night. The man behind this had influence. He had a legal team. A reputation. But he made one mistake. He hurt our children. And there is nothing more relentless than a parent protecting their kid. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice. Quiet, like she didn't want anyone to hear. I'm the nurse from the camp, she said. I heard you're gathering evidence. I have photos. Notes. Things they told me never to write down. Can we meet? I agreed. We met that afternoon in a small coffee shop in town. My hands were trembling the whole drive there. She was already seated when I arrived. She looked tired, worn down in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. She held a folder to her chest like a shield. I've been carrying this since July, she said. I should have come forward sooner, but they threatened me. Said they'd take my license. Said I'd never work with children again. She slid the folder across the table. Inside were photos I will never unsee. Bruises, cuts, raw skin, a boy's back scraped from being dragged across gravel. Medical notes listing hypothermia, untreated infections, signs of trauma too severe for children to carry. This is just from this summer, she said. The nurse before me, she quit after 1 week. Said she couldn't be part of it. They told everyone she had a family emergency. I scanned through the pages, matching every injury to a name, to a face, to a story I already knew. Catherine's daughter with frostbitten fingers. Benjamin's infected cuts. And in one photo, almost hidden in the corner, the door to the hole. The director's daughter, I asked. Did you treat her? The nurse's face crumpled. Yes, several times. 10 years old, covered in bruises. Her mother brought her to me once after she'd been left in the hole for 8 hours. Said she needed to learn respect for the language. I felt sick. I wanted to call child protection, she whispered. But His brother's on the council, I finished. She nodded. His wife teaches at multiple schools. They know everyone. I've seen what happens when someone crosses them. She had taken photos with her phone, had backups. She gave me her contact info, but warned she was leaving town soon. She couldn't handle the stress any longer, or the guilt. When I got home, Tara was in the living room with another girl. Oife. I recognized her. Her parents had been in our group chat, but never came to the meetings. They don't believe her, Tara said softly. They think she's making it up. Oife looked hollow. She handed me her journal. Pages of tidy handwriting, each one detailing a day at camp. What she saw. What she went through. What no one had believed. Alfe's parents found her journal and told her she was making it all up for attention. Turns out they were friends with the director's wife. Alfe said she'd called them personally, said I was a troublemaker, that I refused to take part in the program, and made up stories after being disciplined. I asked Alfe for permission and photographed every page of her journal. It was another piece of truth. Another child failed by the people who were supposed to protect her. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go, but something made me answer. You need to stop. The voice was young, male, nervous. This is the director's son. Please. You don't understand what they're capable of. Are you safe? I asked. Where are you? They sent me to my uncle's in Cork, but I'll be back soon, and when I come back, they'll make me work at the camp. Like them. I can't. I won't. But if you keep going, they'll know I've been talking. We can protect you, I said, even though I wasn't sure how. He gave a bitter laugh. No one can protect anyone from them. This isn't new. My grandfather started it. They call it tradition. They call it character building. They did it to my dad. Now he does it to us, to my sister. The recordings, I said. Kath told me you had recordings. They took my phone, but I backed up some of them before. I'll send you the login. Just be careful. They have people everywhere. Then the line went dead. Minutes later, I received an email. Inside were login credentials. What I found in that cloud account made everything else look small. Hours of audio. The director, coaching the counselors, step by step, on how to discipline without leaving visible marks. Children crying in the background. His voice, calm, clinical, laying out how to break defiance, how to rebuild obedience. But one recording stood out. The director talking with his wife, casual, even amused, about a family that had filed a complaint 5 years earlier. How they'd spread rumors about the father, got him fired from his job. How within 6 months the family had packed up and left town. This is what happens, he said, when people don't respect the program. We protect what we've built. Whatever it takes. I backed up everything, uploaded to multiple cloud drives, emailed copies to myself, saved files on USBs I hid around the house. I was becoming paranoid. But honestly, I had reason to be. The next morning, all 4 tires on my car were slashed. No note, no witnesses, just the message. The police filed a report. Probably just vandals, they said. We lived in a quiet area. There had never been any vandalism before. Tara saw the car from her window. They're trying to scare us, she said. She was right, but I wasn't going to let them win. We're not backing down, I told her. Not now. Not when we're this close. That afternoon, Catherine called me, crying. Her son Benjamin had finally told her something worse than anything before. There was another form of punishment, one none of the kids had talked about yet. They called it the silent treatment. It meant you were erased. No one was allowed to speak to you. No one could look at you. You didn't eat with the group. You slept in a separate building. You didn't exist. Some kids were kept in silence for days. Benjamin said it was worse than the hole. At least in the hole, Catherine sobbed. You knew it would end. One girl endured it for a full week. She eventually tried to hurt herself, just to make someone acknowledge she was there. I added this to our documentation. The psychological trauma these children endured wasn't just real. It was designed. We held another parent meeting that night. 12 families this time. Word was spreading, and the more we compared notes, the more we realized the exact same language had been used with every parent who raised concerns. The same deflections, the same dismissals, but not everyone was with us anymore. 3 families who'd once been vocal had gone completely silent. I called one of the fathers. He hesitated, then admitted, "We got a letter from a law firm. Said we could be sued for defamation if we said anything else." I can't afford this, he told me. I run a small business. They could destroy me. The director was pushing back, using every tool he had. But what he didn't realize was this. The more he pushed, the stronger we became. Mary's daughter had begun talking more. One night, she revealed another disturbing detail. The counselors had a ranking system. Kids who gave in quickly, who obeyed without resistance, were rewarded. A little extra food, a few minutes of hot water, a monitored letter home. It wasn't kindness. It was control. They made us compete, she said, to see who could be the most Irish, who could stop speaking English fastest, who could rat out their friends first. She looked at her mother, tears in her eyes. I turned in my best friend. She was talking in her sleep. I knew she couldn't help it. But I was so scared of being punished again. The guilt these kids were carrying, it was crushing. They had been forced to betray each other, to participate in their own trauma, to believe they deserved it. That night, I started reaching out to local journalists, hoping that, maybe, just maybe, media coverage could force some kind of intervention. But one by one, every reporter I contacted said the same thing. No comment, not enough evidence, not interested. One of the journalists finally told me, off the record, that the director's brother had deep ties to local media through his construction company's advertising contracts. This story's radioactive, he said. No one's going to touch it. We were being shut out from every angle. Then Kath called, with a breakthrough. He'd gotten in touch with 5 other former counselors who were ready to speak out. Safety in numbers, they said. We arranged a meeting for Friday night at my house. But Thursday evening, Kath called again. This time in a panic. 2 of the counselors had gotten unexpected visits. The director himself had shown up at their homes, calm, smiling, and reminding them of the confidentiality agreements they'd signed, threatening legal action if they talked. He knew. He knows everything we're doing, Kath said. Someone's feeding him information. And that's when it hit me. Someone inside our group, one of the parents, was leaking everything. But who? Everyone seemed shaken. Everyone seemed angry. How could anyone side with him after what had been done to our kids? Friday came, and only 2 counselors showed up. Kath and a young woman named Orla. She'd worked at the camp for 2 summers before walking away, disgusted. And she hadn't come empty-handed. She brought proof. Photos she'd taken in secret, the punishment schedules posted inside the counselors' quarters, clear instructions, how long to enforce each punishment, how to escalate, how to track the children. It was disturbingly precise, like it was all part of an optimized system. They had spreadsheets, Orla said, her voice shaking. They were tracking which punishments were most effective, which kids broke down faster. It was like data collection on how to break a child more efficiently. But what she said next chilled the entire room. There was a special program at the camp, reserved for what they called problem children. Parents could pay extra to enroll their kids in it. These kids were subjected to harsher punishments from the very first day. I felt my stomach turn. Did any of our kids? I started to ask. Orla checked her photos. Her expression fell. I'm sorry, she said. 3 children from your group were on that list. The room exploded. Parents shouting, demanding to know who had signed their kid up for that. Accusations flying, some in disbelief, others on the defensive. I only wanted them to take the language seriously. It was chaos. Like watching the same divisions that tore the children apart at camp now playing out among us. I did what I could to calm everyone down, but the damage had been done. The unity we'd built had fractured. Later that night, I sat with Tara. We were both drained. It's falling apart, she whispered. No, I said firmly. That's exactly what he wants. Division, confusion, distrust. He wants us blaming each other instead of holding him accountable. We're not giving him that. But over the weekend, the cracks deepened. Parents started getting calls from the director's wife. In her role as a school teacher, she expressed concern for their children, suggested they may benefit from counseling to help adjust after camp. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a warning. She had access to our kids during school hours. Monday morning, I walked into work and found my boss waiting for me. He looked uncomfortable. We got an anonymous email, he said. Claims you're unstable, that you're harassing a respected program, that you've been neglecting your duties. He sighed. I know you're dealing with something personal, he said. But I can't have this affecting the company. Take some time off. Sort this out. But if it keeps interfering, I didn't argue. I knew what this was. Isolation, discrediting, classic tactics. They wanted me out of the way. But they also gave me exactly what I needed: time. That afternoon, my phone rang again. The voice on the other end trembled. "I'm his mother," she said. "I helped start the camp, but what my son's done, it's not what I wanted. Please, can we talk?" It was the director's mother. Hope sparked. If she was willing to speak, maybe everything could finally change. We arranged to meet at her house the next morning. But that night, Tara came running into my room, shaking. She'd received a message from a fake account. A photo of her during punishment at camp, crying. The caption, "Stop your father or everyone will see." They were threatening to humiliate her, to expose her pain publicly, just to silence us. I held her as she cried, her body tense with fear and shame. They were willing to weaponize the trauma of children. That was a new low. I screenshotted the message, added it to our evidence folder, and then I did something I hadn't planned. I launched a blog, anonymous, and uploaded everything. The recordings, the photos, the notes, the testimonies. If they wanted to play dirty, fine. But the truth would not stay buried. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Hundreds of views. Parents sharing it in private forums. Former students posting their own experiences in the comments. The silence was breaking. The next morning, I drove to meet the director's mother. But when I got to her house, an ambulance was pulling away. A neighbor told me she'd fallen down the stairs during the night. Severe head trauma. Unconscious. Unable to speak. The timing was too perfect. But there was no evidence of foul play. Just another voice. Silenced. I drove home, sick to my stomach, only to find a police car in my driveway. The officers had a warrant. They were there to search my property. By morning, they'd used harassment and fake cyberstalking claims to get a warrant. My laptop, phone, boxes of documents, everything we'd collected was seized. "This is intimidation," I told the officers. One looked sympathetic but said, "We're just doing our jobs." As he drove away with our evidence, Tara watched from the window. "What now?" she asked. I held her close. "We don't quit. We've come too far, and we're not alone." She was right. Our blog had taken on a life of its own. Stories flooding in from past campers, former counselors, even sympathetic local officials. Though the director could confiscate our devices, he couldn't stop the avalanche we'd unleashed. That evening, Catherine called. Chauvin, the camp nurse, had agreed to go public. "I should have protected them before," she said. "Now I will." We arranged for her to meet a Dublin lawyer, outside the director's sphere of influence. But that night, Chauvin's apartment was broken into. Her laptop and backup drives vanished. She called in tears. They knew exactly what to take. Fortunately, she'd mailed copies to her sister in England days earlier, so our evidence was safe, if harder to retrieve. We needed a new plan. Then the director's son reached out again, this time via an encrypted app. He was being brought back from Cork under his parents' watchful eye. Before they took his phone, he shared one final secret, a safety deposit box his grandmother had set up years ago. Inside were the real financial records, proof of parents paying for enhanced discipline, documentation of injuries spanning years, letters from parents who'd complained, even threats used to silence them, and a journal in which his grandfather proudly detailed the character-building methods he'd invented. He sent me the bank details and the key. "Be careful," he warned. "They're watching me." We acted swiftly. The very next morning, every parent in our group visited a different bank. Only I held the genuine key. While the director's people chased multiple targets, I slipped into the correct branch unnoticed. Inside the deposit box was everything we needed. I photographed every page and immediately uploaded the files to multiple secure servers. As I left, I spotted the director's wife trailing me, 3 cars back, her expression steely with fury. I didn't dare go home. Instead, I drove straight to the regional police headquarters an hour away. I walked in with printed copies of the records and demanded to talk to Child Protection Services. This time, they had to listen. The financial fraud alone triggered an inquiry. Combined with the documented abuse, not even the director's connections could save him. By evening, word spread. Authorities were finally taking action. Parents wept with relief. Our children had been heard, believed, validated. But the director wouldn't relent. Late that night, Tara's school called. Someone had circulated the punishment photos online, including images of Tara. She was humiliated in front of her classmates. I raced to the school, finding her in the principal's office, trembling as other kids mocked her. The principal was sympathetic but overwhelmed. "This is what standing up looks like," Tara said softly in the car. "He hurts us even when we win." Yet something remarkable happened next. The other campers who'd been shamed banded together, supporting one another and sharing their stories. The director's intended shame became our collective strength. Former students, too, came forward. One teacher admitted she still couldn't speak Irish without panic after attending 20 years ago. A local shopkeeper revealed his son had suffered nightmares after returning a decade back. His network of silence was unraveling. The investigation moved fast. Financial records were subpoenaed. The camp was ordered closed pending review. The director and his wife were summoned for questioning. Counselors, facing potential charges, began cooperating. And then tragedy struck. The director's son was found at the bottom of a cliff near his uncle's Cork home. The official report ruled it an accident. He'd slipped while hiking alone. But those of us who knew his fear and desperation wondered. "He tried so hard to help us," Tara whispered through tears. "And now he's gone." We held a quiet memorial for the director's son, the boy who had risked everything to expose the truth about his own family. His recordings had been vital. His bravery had helped stop a cycle of harm that might have gone on for years. He didn't just save evidence, he saved children. But even then, the director wasn't finished. Facing mounting charges, he tried one final tactic: money. He offered financial settlements to every family involved. Large sums, but with a catch. We'd have to sign away our right to speak. Some parents, exhausted, hurting, and just wanting closure, considered it. But at our final group meeting, Tara stood up. "Don't let him buy his way out," she said quietly but firmly. "Please, that money won't heal us. Only justice will." Her words cut through the room. And in that moment, we all chose the same path. We refused. No hush money, no compromise. The investigation moved forward. As autumn set in, the camp stayed closed. Criminal charges were officially filed. The director's wife was suspended from teaching. Their hold over the town, over our children, was breaking apart. Tara, too, was changing, healing, slowly. She joined a support group for survivors, started therapy with a counselor who specialized in institutional trauma. There were hard days, but then, one evening, she turned to me and said something that stunned me. "I want to learn Irish again, but the right way, without fear, without pain. I want to take it back." So we found her a tutor, a retired grandmother who taught through stories and song. Watching Tara rediscover joy in a language that had once filled her with dread, it felt like watching spring return after a long, brutal winter. The legal process would take time, but we had done what we set out to do: protect others, tell the truth, and show our children that their voices mattered. The director's mother eventually came out of her coma, but remembered nothing. She was confused to learn about the camp's closure, insisted her son would never hurt children. The investigation into her fall remained open, but with no leads. Then, one winter morning, a small, unmarked package arrived at our doorstep. Inside was a USB drive. No name, no return address. Just a handwritten note. For the children who couldn't speak. From someone who should have acted sooner. The drive contained hundreds of files, photos, videos, internal documents, spanning 15 years of the camp's operations. We turned it over to authorities. Every single piece added weight to our case. Every voice, even in silence, still mattered. The camp building sat empty now, overgrown with weeds. Local kids whispered that it was haunted, that sometimes at night you could still hear crying. Maybe they could, but the ghosts inside couldn't hurt anyone anymore. Our fight had cost us jobs, friendships, peace of mind, but it had also given us something stronger. Purpose, community, a second chance for our kids. The director's trial was officially set for spring. We'd have to testify, relive it all again, but we'd do it together. Parents and children, side by side, united. As I write this, Tara is in the next room practicing Irish. She's singing now, a traditional song. Her voice, soft at first, grows stronger with every verse. The language that once brought fear now brings her peace. She's reclaiming it, word by word, phrase by phrase. That's what real victory looks like. Not just the director in handcuffs, though that matters. Not just the camp locked for good, though that's essential. Victory is my daughter singing again. Victory is every survivor who found the courage to speak. Every parent who stood their ground when it would have been easier to walk away. Every former counselor who finally said, Enough. The Geiltacht was supposed to preserve language and culture, but one man twisted that purpose into something cruel. Yet culture is resilient. Language survives. And children, when given safety, truth, and love, can recover from almost anything. We had won this battle, but we knew there were others out there, other camps, other systems, other abusers hiding behind rules, silence, and reputation. Our story inspired more families to ask questions, to dig deeper, to demand transparency. Change comes slowly, but it comes. One voice becomes two, two become 10, 10 become 100, until silence breaks. Tara finished her song and came to show me her notebook. Inside was a poem, in Irish, about resilience, about light in dark places. Her handwriting was steady, clear, strong. The girl who'd come home from Camp Hollow and trembling was becoming something fierce, someone unbreakable. "I think I want to be a teacher," she said. "Maybe work with kids who've been through stuff like this. Help them see they can heal too." I hugged her tightly. This daughter of mine, who had stared into the dark and chosen light, who refused to let what happened define her, who took her pain and turned it into purpose. The camp tried to break her. Instead, it revealed her strength. And in finding her own, she helped dozens of others find theirs. That's a legacy worth protecting, because the director thought fear was power. He was wrong. Love is power. Truth is power. And a parent's determination to protect their child, that's the most unstoppable force in the world. 2 weeks before the trial, I got a call from the prosecutor. She sounded tense. "I need you to come in," she said. "Something's happened with the evidence." Tara and I looked at each other, our hearts pounding. We drove to her office in silence. This wasn't over. Not yet. "One of them looked grim," the prosecutor said. "The director's legal team just filed a motion. They're claiming the evidence from the safety deposit box was obtained unlawfully, that you had no right to access it." My stomach dropped. "But his son gave me the key. His grandmother wanted this." "Without written authorization," she said gently. "It's complicated. The judge is reviewing whether it can be used in court." Tara squeezed my hand. We both knew what that meant. Without those financial records, without the grandfather's journal, our case was in serious danger. That evening, I called an emergency meeting with the parents. The mood was heavy. Some families were already talking about taking the settlement money the director had offered. "Don't let him buy his way out," Catherine said, her voice hoarse. "Our children deserve better." But I saw it in their faces. Months of fighting, of seeing their kids struggle, of waking up to fear and exhaustion. The director's team wasn't just using lawyers. They were wearing us down, brick by brick. Then Mary's daughter stood up. "What if we testify?" she said. "All of us kids, not just in writing, in person, in court." The room went still. These kids had already endured so much. Asking them to stand in court, face the director, relive what happened, it felt like asking too much. But then Tara said softly, "I want to do it. I want to look him in the eye and tell everyone what he did." Slowly, others nodded. "Braver than we ever gave them credit for." Over the next week, our prosecutor, Diarbla, prepared the children. She was kind but honest, explaining what would happen, how the defense would try to rattle them, paint them as overdramatic teens exaggerating normal camp rules. Then, 3 days before the trial, another hit. Siobhan called in tears. Her sister's house in England, the one where she had sent the backups, had been broken into. The evidence was gone. "They knew," she whispered. "They were watching. They knew where it was." It hit me then just how far this went. The network, the reach. But it also meant something else. The director was scared and desperate. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I found Tara in the kitchen, hands trembling as she tried to make tea. "What if they don't believe us?" she asked. I pulled her into a hug. "Then we keep fighting. We appeal. We go public. We don't stop." She nodded, and I felt her tears soaking through my shirt. The courthouse was full the next morning. Parents, children, former counselors. Even local media had pushed back against the director's attempt to keep them out. The director sat at the defense table, calm on the outside, his wife at his side. But his hands trembled when he adjusted his tie. Diarbla opened with the truth. This wasn't language immersion. It was organized abuse. Children punished for speaking their own language. Financial manipulation. Families misled. The defense fired back, framing the director as a misunderstood educator, that the children just couldn't handle structure, that it was discipline, not abuse. Then the testimonies began. Catherine was first. Her voice was barely audible as she described the ice baths, how they held her down when she tried to climb out, how her fingers turned blue, how she couldn't feel them for hours. The defense pounced. Isn't it true you were a difficult student? That you broke camp rules repeatedly? I spoke English in my sleep, Catherine replied. I couldn't control it. Benjamin described the hole, the dark, the panic. Passing out and waking up still locked inside. The defense called it a timeout space. There were scratch marks on the walls, Benjamin said, from the kids before me, trying to claw their way out. One after another, parents and children took the stand. Catherine told of her son's night terrors. Mary spoke about her daughter's panic at hearing Irish spoken aloud. The patterns were undeniable. Then came Kath, a former counselor. His words cut deep. They trained us, taught us how to make the kids break, how to escalate punishments. They told us it was the only way. Why did you do it? Deirbla asked. Because it had been done to me, he said, turning to the director. We thought it was normal. They convinced us this was how to preserve the language. The defense attacked him, of course, called him bitter, said he was only here for revenge. But Kath didn't flinch. He named names, dates, details. On day 3, Orla testified. She had the photos, the punishment schedules. The defense called them fakes, but the metadata proved otherwise. Time-stamped, geotagged, indisputable. Then came the unexpected. A woman named Bridget. Quiet, shaken. She'd been the camp secretary for 10 years. I kept copies, she said. Emails, payment records, complaints. I was scared. But when I heard about that boy... She paused, tears in her eyes. The director's son. I trained him when he was little. He was a good boy. What happened to him wasn't an accident. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. I heard the director on the phone the night before. He said his son was becoming a problem, that something needed to be done. The next morning we were told he'd fallen. Tara squeezed my hand until it hurt. We'd all suspected, but hearing it out loud, it shattered something inside us. The director's wife took the stand last. She painted her husband as a cultural guardian, a man misunderstood, a devoted father. She dismissed the children as soft, coddled, unable to endure challenge. And your daughter? The prosecutor asked. She received the same discipline. And where is she now? At a school in France. Since when? The wife hesitated. Since September. Right when the investigation began? Silence. They had removed their own daughter the moment scrutiny began, while still defending the very punishments they'd forced onto others. When it was finally Tara's turn, she walked to the stand with her head held high. Her voice was clear as she described everything. The punishments, the fear, the way kids were turned against each other just to avoid becoming the next target. The worst part wasn't the pain, she said. It was how they made us hurt each other, made us believe we deserved it. The defense lawyer tried to shake her, implied she was exaggerating, said maybe she just wanted attention. I have nightmares every night, she said calmly. I flinch when I hear Irish spoken. I used to love that language. They stole that from me. That's not exaggeration. That's my reality. But you're learning Irish again, aren't you? The lawyer pressed. If it was that traumatic, why would you? Tara didn't blink. Because I refuse to let them win. Every word I speak now is an act of defiance. The room went completely silent. Even the lawyer seemed thrown off. On the final day of testimony, the prosecutor played the audio recordings, the ones the director's son had saved before he died. His father's voice, cold and clinical, instructing counselors on how to push children just far enough without leaving marks. How to avoid raising suspicion. The director's face drained of color. His wife sat beside him, unmoving. In closing arguments, the defense tried one last time to reframe it all, called the methods traditional, claimed the parents had signed waivers, insisted no lasting harm was done. The prosecutor didn't flinch. She showed the photos, the medical files, the psychological reports. She read excerpts from the grandfather's journal, detailing how he developed techniques to break so-called wild Irish children, like horses. This wasn't language immersion, she said. This was a system built on pain, passed down like an heirloom. It ends now. The jury deliberated for 6 agonizing hours. When they returned, The room held its breath. Guilty. On all counts. Child endangerment, assault, fraud. The director's mask cracked. His wife let out a soft, stunned sound. But it wasn't over. Sentencing would take weeks. Other counselors were still awaiting trial. The investigation into the director's son's death remained open. Outside the courthouse, parents and children hugged. Some wept. Justice had finally come, but it felt bittersweet. Nothing could return what had been taken. That evening, the director's mother called. Her voice was stronger than it had been since the fall. "I remember now," she said. "What I wanted to tell you before. There are more camps. My son helped create them. Different names. Same methods. You've only shut down one." My blood ran cold. We'd won this fight, but the war wasn't over. In the days that followed, investigators used the grandmother's files to identify 3 more camps using the same tactics. Parents pulled their children out. Former students began sharing their own stories. The cycle was breaking. The director was sentenced to 12 years in prison. His wife received 5. Several counselors were given lesser terms. It wasn't enough. Not for what was done, but it was something. At sentencing, the director gave one final speech, claimed he'd lost his way, claimed his intentions were good. But when the judge asked if he had anything to say to his victims, he said nothing. As we stepped out of court for the last time, Tara paused on the steps. She pulled out her phone and played a recording. Her voice singing in Irish, the same song she'd been learning with her tutor. She posted it to the survivors group with a simple message. For the kids who still can't sing. Within hours, others followed. Recordings of songs, poems, even just greetings in Irish. They were reclaiming their voices, their language, their dignity. That winter, the camp buildings were torn down. The land was donated for a new Irish cultural center, one that taught through music, stories, kindness. Tara and other survivors were invited to help design the curriculum. I returned to work. My boss, who had followed the trial, apologized for doubting me. My reputation was intact. The forced leave had been worth every day. Tara's healing continued. Her nightmares grew less frequent. She still had hard days, but she laughed again, sang again. She even began teaching younger children Irish, through play, through songs, through joy. The way it should have always been. The support group kept meeting, parents and children together. Some healed quickly, some slowly, some not completely, but no one faced it alone anymore. One spring evening, I found Tara writing, not about pain this time, but poetry. In Irish and English, weaving both languages like threads in the same fabric. "I'm applying to university," she said. "Irish studies and psychology. I want to learn how language can heal instead of harm." I thought of the girl who had come home from camp just 9 months earlier. Silent, afraid, hollow, and now here she was, shaping her pain into purpose. The case of the director's son remained officially unsolved, but his recordings lived on. They helped shut down multiple camps. They saved lives. We made sure he wasn't forgotten. Some families did take insurance settlements in the end. Money to cover long-term therapy, to rebuild. No one judged them. Healing takes many forms. Across the country, policies began to change. Schools started demanding better oversight. Parents asked tougher questions, and children began to understand that it was okay to speak up when something wasn't right. Tara graduated secondary school with honors. In her speech, she spoke about resilience, about finding your voice after someone tries to bury it. She spoke partly in Irish, a language she had reclaimed and made her own. As I watched her on that stage, standing tall and strong, I thought of everything we had endured, everything we'd fought to uncover. The Gaeltacht still exists, and so do other summer programs. But now, they are run by people who love children and respect the culture, where kids laugh, learn, and feel safe. Where speaking English might earn you a gentle reminder, not fear. None of those new students would know what Tara survived just to stand on that stage. And that too is a kind of victory. Because justice isn't just about guilty verdicts or prison terms. It's about every child who chooses healing over silence. Every parent who speaks truth when it's easier to stay quiet. Every counselor who breaks the cycle instead of continuing it. The director will be eligible for parole in 8 years. We'll be there, all of us, to remind the world that some things should never be forgotten.